You just hit play on Tech Vibe Pittsburgh, so strap on your seatbelt as you get a front row seat to Pittsburgh's technology and innovation ecosystem. And I'm Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council, where for nearly 3 decades, I've been telling the stories of all of Pittsburgh's coolest tech companies and the men and women making them happen. So today we are welcoming Christopher Rusch, the CEO of Agile Rising, to discuss the evolution and current trends in Agile methodologies. We'll be emphasizing the importance of adopting new technologies like AI, of course. So as we all know, Agile was initially developed back in 2000 and has evolved from a team-level approach to a strategic organizational focus. And Rusch highlights the need for effective organizational design, business architecture, and enterprise architecture to optimize Agile practices. He notes the impact of remote work during the pandemic and the ongoing challenges of hybrid work when it comes to making Agile work in your organization. He also stresses the importance of integrating AI into products and workflows and the necessity of external consultants to guide organizations through these very difficult changes sometimes. So let's welcome Christopher to the show today, and let's take a deep dive into all things Agile. Christopher, fantastic to see you again. It's been a while since we've had you in the Huntington Bank studios talk about what's going on with Agile Rising, talking about just Agile trends in general, because so much has changed as our technology has changed dramatically, especially with AI over the past couple years. I feel like we got a lot to talk about today.
I think we do have a lot to talk about. I'm glad to be here and glad to be back.
Excellent. Before we jump into things, our listeners need to know who Christopher Rusch is. Simple as that.
Yeah, Christopher Rusch. I'm the CEO of Agile Rising. We're a management consulting firm that's based here in Pittsburgh, and we have offices and consultants across the country, and we help organizations, companies, nonprofits, colleges, the U.S. federal government agencies improve the way they work, improve the way they develop products, and be more efficient and more effective.
What I love about it is you're cutting across some serious industries there. Like, you're not hanging out in one vertical. You're across it, which goes to show just how important Agile is, because every business needs to have this mindset of doing things efficiently.
Yeah, we get the question a lot. Are you in a particular vertical?
Right.
Or do you have a specialization? And what we're talking about is the way that people work better together, how you apply the latest technology to improving the way an organization works and building better products. And those are universal. And whether you're doing manufacturing or you're doing high-tech web apps and IT-enabled things, or whether you're providing services to others, those things are universal concepts. And Agile is fundamentally about finding better ways of developing software and developing products. And we're always about staying at that cutting edge way of working and helping our customers stay there as well.
Definitely. I think, hasn't Agile reached a bit of an anniversary for, because it's been around for a while now. I remember, because time's moving so fast for me, I remember when it was this new concept, but it's not so new anymore. People really started to adopt it, so it's gone through some changes. What's behind that?
Yeah, Agile Manifesto was written in the year 2000. We're 25 years in.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so for those of us that are like, oh yeah, it's some new way, and
no, it's been around for a while.
And there's a lot of people who it's just the way of working, right? It's not a new way of working. It's not a different way of working. It's the being collaborative, being focused on delivering frequently and delivering high quality is the way a lot of people have been working. But what's been happening over the last few years is an evolution of what Agile means and how companies and organizations approach it. And I think what's driving that is, one, what was going on 25 years ago.
Oh, exactly.
Why was Agile created?
Because I remember when it did come out, it was like this just revolutionary. Like, what? Fail and fail fast? It's just like they keep iterating, and it was just this new thing. And I think as it has evolved, some people were like taking some bits and pieces of it and using it. Some people were just fully embracing it, where it was like drilled into their culture. So you get this, as it has become 25 years old, we've now seen various levels in which people use it, some very formally, some not as formally.
Yeah.
Some might be using it and don't even know they're using it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Agile was developed 25 years ago as a reaction to transitioning from kind of the old green screen applications to object-oriented,
Right.
internet-powered applications. And it was super successful for that, proved its value. And I think two things have happened.
Yeah, tell me.
One, you hit on it, is some organizations were really successful with implementing Agile. Others picked and chose and maybe did some mechanics, but never really saw the benefits, never really changed the fundamental approach. And as a result, are still not really at an optimal place, not really at an efficient place.
Did it almost give Agile a bad name almost? Not only a bad name, or people just saying it's not as effective as they hoped it would be? Like,
certainly in some places, right? Or it's been, hey, we did that, it's the way we're working, or we tried that, it didn't really work. And where we are today is we're going through another technology evolution, right?
I've heard about that. Yes, it's connects, isn't it?
It's not about object-oriented programming and the internet, right? We're now going into AI-powered apps. It's like it's a next generation of not just new products, but it's ways of working, right? And everybody's talking about, well, how am I going to adopt AI to improve the way I develop products or the way I do my job? And organizations are all saying, how can we incorporate AI into our products? And that, as you said, is leading to things moving faster than ever and evolving faster than ever. And fundamentally, what being agile means is being able to react to new technology, new market opportunities,
right.
new
I was going to say, yeah. As an agile company, you have to be agile yourself.
Exactly. And every organization needs to be agile, because if you're not, you're going to be left in the dustbin, right? You're going to go out of business. You're going to be acquired.
I can't imagine any company in this day and age, no matter what you do, if you're not adopting these mindsets, because you're going to get slammed.
Yeah. But what we've moved out of is thinking about Agile as being daily stand-up meetings or or sprints or kind of team level agility. The foundations of that are there, and it's either working for companies or it's not working for companies.
That's interesting you bring that up, because I often wondered, like in the early days when people were trying to have the teams, like that's something that I could see some cultures very much embracing that, but other cultures maybe not so much. Yeah. So they didn't do that, and they did some things and they didn't get the full benefit. But now that this has evolved for 25 years, you're seeing that, the days of the team stand up, not so much.
And there may be value there, but it's those mechanics and the mechanics of what's happening at the team level. If you haven't fixed the way that you're doing your strategic planning, if you don't have a budgeting approach that allows you to pivot on a regular basis. And what we're seeing more and more focus on is if your teams aren't structured correctly, and if your organization isn't structured correctly, what you have is just inefficiencies in handoffs, the way people work. And a lot of organizations have said, we're adopting Scrum and Agile, and we're working in these sprints, and we're working in short iterations. But we still have this very fractured organization that just can't do things effectively.
Right.
So the sorts of things that are really driving the work and the improvements that we do with our customers today are organizational design, business architecture, enterprise architecture.
That's fascinating to me, that you're going in and you actually look at the structure of the company as the which just makes total sense to me.
Because that's where a lot of the bottlenecks and inefficiencies are just the way the people are organized, the way information flows. And then you can find that if you start fixing those things and you start automating things that can be automated, you start using the right tools and integrating the right tools, you get the right structure, the right business architecture, then you can decentralize how those teams operate, and you don't need to dictate what particular Agile approach is being used at the team level. You can let those teams figure out the best way to work if you fixed the structure, the bones, the architecture of the organization itself.
Gotcha. I got a couple more questions. I keep thinking that as you're telling me this, my mind starts thinking. I get pretty excited about this. First, I have to just bring up and just say that I feel like if you're a company, you need to have an outside consultant do this for you. I really feel like if you're trying to reorganize your company internally, you're going to miss things, because what's the old saying? You can't see the forest through the trees through the forest. I just feel like having that outside perspective, I think it just makes a consultant on this completely necessary. I know you can try to do stuff yourself, and that's great, but I think at a certain point when your business is at a certain size, you owe it to yourself to invest in this service to make sure that you're
Yeah,
getting that.
I
That's just where
certainly
my
have a
brain goes.
biased opinion
I'm sure you would
on this,
too,
but
but
over the course of my career, I've seen lots of examples of internal change agents trying to make improvements and
Right.
not having success.
exactly.
And then you engage an experienced consultant from the outside who's able to convince some of the people that were resistant to that change.
Right.
So can it be done internally? It certainly can be, but for a lot of organizations, it benefits significantly.
I would look
to
at you as like my business therapist to a certain degree.
We
You
often,
sound off, you take
yeah.
your notes, come back, say, I think you need to be trying this.
Yeah, as an executive coach or an executive consultant, it often does feel like a therapist sometimes. The other thing that it's not just, do you need an outside person to see what's going on? When you're talking about things like changing processes, that's somebody's baby, right? They
Well,
spend a lot of time,
that's where
effort,
egos
yeah,
and just
and
feelings come into
and they
play.
built a system that worked really well
Right.
at a point in
Time,
time
but now time has
that
moved on,
maybe it's
right?
not, right? Or
Yeah.
when you're talking about reorganizing the teams, changing the business architecture, changing the enterprise architecture,
Totally.
that you start having people that's my part of the organization. What am I going to do if that gets reorganized? So sometimes having somebody that doesn't have a kind of a vested interest, what it's going to look like at the end, it's saying, hey, let's help you build the optimal thing, and then help with the organizational change management of knowing that this is going to be hard and there's going to be change there. How do we bring people along so that they see that something new and something different doesn't mean that they have less control or that they're less important or those sorts of things.
That's tricky stuff.
It's very tricky.
Very tricky stuff. So what also got my brain spinning on this, which I get really interested about, because I'm really interested when it comes to work dynamics and how the office has changed. And I see this, it's like almost a double change happening right now. So obviously when everyone worked from home during the pandemic, it created this new dynamic where you couldn't implement your agile practices the way you normally would because people are distributed and they're not interacting in the same way. So I think people have adapted around that. But now we're starting to see the push to get people back into the office again, which I'm very happy about. And then you almost have to relearn some of that again. And on top of that, we've had this AI revolution, for lack of a better term, come in to really speed things up in the office as we're starting to get our workflows optimized with AI and everything. So I'm like, wait a second, it's just once we figured it out, we got to figure it out again, right?
Yeah, and obviously the pandemic created challenges in all sorts of different ways, and we learned a whole lot of different things from it. And that decision of, are we working remotely? Are we coming back into the office? Are we doing a hybrid schedule?
And the whole not knowing makes it really hard to plan because you can't put money into the plan this if you're not really sure if you're going to be in the office or not.
Yeah,
goodness.
And there were companies that canceled plans to build new offices, that let leases go, and now you're thinking about, well, if we're going to bring everybody back, what's that going to look like?
Yeah.
So it's a really big and it's a really interesting topic, and it's one of those things where there's no single right answer to the best way of working,
of course.
It's super dependent on the type of work that's being done, on the company culture, where you want to access your talent pool, and all of those sorts of things. And so that's something that leaders need to be very thoughtful and very intentional about. And they also, once they make a decision, have to be very thoughtful and intentional about how people are going to work together and how they're going to collaborate. One of the biggest kind of complaints that we've heard from kind of teams and frontline workers is being told to come back into the office, especially in a hybrid environment, and then the reason to bring people together. And Agile Manifesto says the best way to convey information is face-to-face, right? Agile has always been about collaborating. And so if you're going to bring people together in the office, that needs to be in order to create collaboration opportunities, to create a more efficient way of working, to drive creativity around what you're building. So what we're working with our customers with is, how do you do that? How do you structure that? And how do you make sure that if you are doing remote work, that is just as productive and that people only logging in a couple hours a day and those sorts of things.
There's just been such dramatic changes because even as we come back to the offices, and you mentioned this, is the idea that there's so much more flexibility now where you're still not going to have everybody back in. And so it creates new challenges for the company to be as efficient as possible, for it to be moving as fast as it does, which is why I continue to say, this is why I really feel like it takes a professional to figure these things out. And you can read some books on the weekend and go to a seminar too, and that's great because you want to have that background. But I really feel like if you're serious about implementing this, you got to bring in the pros. And that's why companies like yours exist, and you're here to do that.
Yeah, and there's some really interesting things that organizations can do with an Agile framework, like scaled Agile framework. Some have always encouraged this kind of a quarterly cadence to a bigger planning.
Okay.
And we found some companies have been really successful with having a primarily remote workforce that is working from home most of the time, and then bringing them together every couple months or once a quarter for a highly interactive week of planning, collaboration, and work, which then kind of powers it for the next couple months or the next quarter while they're working remotely or using some other variation of that. We often think of working remotely, working in the office, or a couple days a week in, couple days a week out. And there's a whole bunch of other options there that can have more remote or more in office and offer some degree of flexibility in between. But you have to think about how you're going to design that and how are those going to be valuable.
It's hard stuff.
And making those actual collaboration events when people come in.
And then sticking to it. And that's where I feel like the consultant is very helpful because you feel like you have someone to report to. So it helps you stick to that. It's really easy for us to build plans. I'm still guilty of it. I'm always trying to do stuff that I can convince myself, if anything, during the course of the day that, we can do that later. But if I realize I have to actually report to someone back being like, this is where we went. And so, we need to do that.
And showing that there's actual value in it. Like
completely.
What are the outcomes? Are we delivering value faster? Are we delivering better products? Are we beating the competition? Are we improving quality? And whatever approach you take to in-office work or remote work or hybrid work, if you're not measuring and able to demonstrate whether it's better than the alternative, then you're just going off of somebody's personal feeling about whether we like people being in the office or whether we don't like them being in the office. And that's not a good way to optimize your organization.
We've all seen a lot of prognosticators out there. Oh yeah, no one's ever coming back to the office. Oh really? Because that's always, we shouldn't be doing that. So let's talk about the future just a little bit. I'm always curious because you got to be keeping your head way out. You got to be looking like around the corner as hard as you can. What are some things you're seeing right now that are starting to interest you? Some trends you might be seeing? What's out there that has you fired up?
Yeah, I think the biggest trend that everybody's talking about is AI.
Of course, yeah.
And that can mean so much, right? AI is an enormous topic, and ChatGPT and large language models have generated a lot of excitement. But when you look at what companies are actually doing, there's a lot of investment happening right now in the infrastructure to run the new technologies that are getting the capacity in the cloud, in data centers to be able to run those new systems, upskilling the workforce, both the IT workforce and across the business, in how can these modern tools improve the job that we're doing? How can it improve productivity? And then how can we change the business using the new technology tools that are coming out, building AI into your products, building AI into your workflows? The trends that we're seeing are an increased investment in technology, primarily being driven by adopting those new platforms, those new technologies, and the infrastructure to support them, getting the security in place because security is top of mind for everybody these
100%,
days.
absolutely.
And the more systems you're bringing in and the more you're leveraging AI, the more potential vulnerabilities that you're having. And then how do you optimize your organization to take advantage of that? And that comes back to the business architecture. How do we structure our teams? Are the teams, as they're currently designed, built to support our legacy products, or are they built to support the future and what we're doing now?
Brought that full circle. I like that. And because it goes to show you this, it's going to be good again. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a really exciting time. There's a lot that's going on, and there's a lot that's new that's happening that organizations are trying to feel out. What's the right platform? What's the right approach for us here? The other big one that kind of fits into all of those is also continued app modernization, but also application rationalization, that organizations have so many different tools, so many, sometimes multiple instances of the same tool. And when you start thinking about trying to implement AI to look at everything that's going on in the organization, how to improve it, how do we share data, really hard to do when you have hundreds of applications that are all going in different directions.
It's like herding cats at that point.
Yeah, exactly. We're also helping companies look at how do you identify all of those applications that you have, all those cloud subscriptions that you have, figure out which ones you really need, which are ones that
It's
you
funny you bring that
consolidate.
up at Tech Council. I have 3 or 4 subscriptions, and now that they've evolved, I could probably get rid of 2 or 3. So I got to figure out which ones I don't need anymore.
And everybody's in that situation.
Yeah, totally.
And the bigger the organization you're in, the more departments you're in, the more you multiply that out as, as different things. So
it becomes real dollars at that point.
It becomes real dollars.
Yeah.
You have to figure out where you're spending it in the right place. And then you have to integrate them, right? That if you're going to have a bunch of different tools that you do want to pull together and use to gather metrics, use to gather data intelligence about what you should be doing, you have to know what they are and you have to integrate them together and you have to have a framework that does that.
Yeah. My key takeaway here is that you get to have a lot of fun doing what you're doing because you're never solving the same problem twice, right? And you're always using evolving technology in order to keep these companies, but they're evolving technology rolling in the same direction. You got a little bit of like psychotherapy going on there sometimes too, just to make it all the more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about innovation, you're always talking about the next generation of things. And I'll say there are a lot of universal problems. One of the things that we do find is that there are common challenges
that makes
across
sense. Of
organizations.
course, yeah, you're going to see these things, but they have their different things about them where you got to tweak it a little bit, right?
Yeah. So the good news is that every organization doesn't have to solve the problems themselves. They can learn from what's going on,
Totally.
not just across their industry, but across other industries, and bringing those lessons learned or bringing together leaders from multiple organizations that we're working with is something that we do to share that information and help speed up these adoption processes.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I love having these conversations because it's so amazing for me to see just the different facets of our tech ecosystem here in Pittsburgh and the role that Agile Rising plays within that. I think it's just so important that there's companies like yours out there. So why we love doing what we do at Tech Council. We get to talk to folks like Christopher Roosh here and learn about these things. I know you definitely educated me today. I know our listeners out there have learned something new. And I encourage them to check out your website, which we have in the liner notes of this podcast, learn more about it. And any questions about anything Agile, reach out to Christopher. You're here to help. You're a very helpful guy and easy to reach out to and connect with. And I really encourage our members and listeners to do just that because these are problems. I keep saying this. You're not going to read the Agile for Dummies book over the weekend and start integrating some great stuff that's going to move your company forward, especially as complex and fast moving as our work environments have become.
Yeah. And as we've talked about these challenges, it's reframing Agile from thinking about it at the team level to thinking about it at the C-suite level and thinking about it at the board level.
Okay.
And part of that big investment that's happening in technology is coming with it, adding a technology committee to the board of directors at organizations is becoming more and more popular. And so when you think about that, companies that are thinking about these changes and needing the help, it's also different people within the organization that should be thinking about the kind of help that they need. And it's not a technology problem. It's the businesses that are adopting technology. It's the marketing organization and sales organizations that are optimizing. And it's all the way up to the boardroom level of how organizations are going to adopt the next wave of technology and the next wave of working.
It's complex stuff and it's fascinating. That's why I love having these conversations. Christopher, thanks for hanging out with me today.
Great being here.
Yeah, good stuff. Once again, it's been Jonathan Kirshner here at the Pittsburgh Tech Council, and you can reserve your front row seat here at Pittsburgh's tech sector. Just follow us, and you'll get this stuff right in your notifications of however you get your podcast. Just follow us and you'll get the great conversations like we just had today.